Welcome to our special speaker event. Yay! So excited. So today we have our special guest. May I introduce John Antonucci. So John Antonucci is a nationally recognized speaker, author, and leadership consultant with more than 2 decades of business ownership and leadership experience. I would elaborate more, but John, you can go ahead and take it away.
Thank you, Ashton. Good morning, everyone. I know we just sat down. I'm going to ask you to please stand up. I know. I'm annoying. I'm just going to get it out of the way. I might as well own that from the start. I'm going to ask you to repeat after me with a little bit of enthusiasm. Pretend like you're happy to be here, especially you on the front row that got here a little late and now you got to deal with my breath. Because everyone else got those back seats with the quickness. Repeat after me. I'm awake. I'm awake. Alive. Alert. Joyous. Enthusiastic. And grateful for this day. Excellent. Give yourselves a hand and then please feel free to take a seat. I am thrilled to be here. I'm happy to be able to share our Embracing Failure presentation. We have 38 modules at SML, and this is it's right up there. It's either our first or second most requested session that we get. And so I get to give this, and I would almost be willing to say that this session is kind of what put SML on the map because it has been so impactful. So I'm delighted to get to share it with you all today. Before we start, I want to say 2 things. The first thing is there is no one in this room, including myself, that likes to fail. And I understand that. And I am not trying to tell you that you should enjoy failure. The second thing that I want to say is that, as Ashton mentioned, most of the time I get to speak to leadership teams. And so this was originally designed for leaders that might accidentally kind of have that perfection mentality. Anybody know any leaders that want everything perfect? Don't raise your hand. They're here. Don't do it. And so that was kind of the original line of thinking is like, hey, we need to embrace the opportunity that failure provides. But as we've delivered it to more and more audiences across the United States, we recognize, you can see we kind of scratched out that word leadership and wrote everyone's success, the secret to everyone's success. So we're going to talk about those things here today. And as we get started, I want to start by asking you all a question. And that question is, what was your biggest failure in 2025? You don't have to answer me, but reflect for just a second. What was your biggest failure last year? And as you sit there kind of struggling with that, I have a follow-up question. Why is that question so difficult? Because you're sitting there like, man, what? And there's really only 2 reasons that it can be difficult. Reason number 1 is if you didn't fail last year. I'm going to be honest, I don't believe that's a possibility. And reason number 2 is because we are naturally adverse to admitting we failed. In fact, if I had been a real jerk and pointed at any one of you and said, what was your biggest failure last year? Either you would have scrambled to come up with something that was like, you know how when you do a job interview and they ask what's your biggest weakness, and you try to come up with something that could sound like a weakness, but it's actually a strength. You'd be like, well, I spent too much time at the gym in 2025. Like, I just really should have found more balance, right? Or you would have been like, you know what? I don't know what my biggest one was. It's, I'm trying to reflect. Those would probably be the 2 answers. And so because we have this aversion to admitting failure, because we struggle to say out loud, hey, I screwed up when, we mitigate the impact, the positive impact that it can have. And here's the real problem with that. We live in a world, I call it the social media perfect world. When's the last time anybody here posted your radical failure on social media? You guys aren't posting your marital difficulties on social media? You're not posting that speeding ticket that you got? No, of course you're not. Right? You're posting the best parts of your life, and so is everybody else. And so we can get stuck and trapped in this mindset that says everybody else has it together. Everybody else has it figured out. I'm the only one struggling. And it can feel like everybody else is on this path of success and everything is glowing. And we know kind of like in the back of our mind that's not true. Because that very same person that just posted their beautiful vacation with their spouse, like a month later is announcing, oh, BTW, we're getting a divorce. Right? But I want to encourage you, don't believe the hype because failure is a part of life. Failure is going to happen. I said a minute ago that I'm not here to tell you that you should like failure. Nobody likes failure, but it's going to happen. Period. Full stop. We can just stop right now, and as long as we were to absorb the idea, failure is going to happen, we'd probably be ahead of the average person in the world because social media is a lie. It's like 1% truth on social media. Even books. You read a book. How many of you guys have read a self-help book sometime in the past year? Okay, cool. 25, 30% of you. Excellent. If you haven't, maybe think about it. But here's the deal. You read these books, and if you read as many of those as I do, I think last time I checked, I've read like over 800 of those like nonfiction development type books. And you read enough of those, and it really feels like they've got all the answers. It really feels like if you could just deploy that strategy perfectly, your life would be figured out, doesn't it? But the books aren't telling the whole story most of the time. I was actually proofreading a book for a buddy of mine who's in the leadership development space. He sent me an advanced copy, said, I'd love to hear your thoughts. And so I read through the book, and I got to a part in the book, and I'm reading it, and I read it like 3 times, and I'm like, I was there for that. That is not what happened. That is a very sanitized version of what happened. And then even us speakers, right? We get up here and we act like we have all the answers and we act like, we've got all, we don't. 90% of us are faking it till we make it. And the other 10% of us are just lying. We don't have it all figured out. It's absolutely a part of life. And when we try to hide our failures, I really think that most people are spending more energy trying to hide when they fail than it would take for them to actually grow from that failure. We put massive amounts of energy. I say all the time to people that we spend so much time and energy trying to impress people we don't even like. And all the time we're trying to cover this up. So when we do, or when we refuse to admit our failure, when we refuse to acknowledge it, when we want to pretend like it doesn't exist, it has massive consequences. And there's at least 3 that happen in an organizational setting. In an organizational setting, when we hide our failure, the first thing that happens is we put our ego above our growth. We put ego. We put what people think of me above my actual growth and journey. And if you're a leader, you're putting what people think of you above your team's growth as well. We'll talk about that a little bit more in a minute. In addition to putting ego over growth, we create a personal pedestal. Anybody ever heard the phrase, the higher they go, the harder they fall? Well, that's what happens in this kind of culture of perfection, where you end up with this exponential impact of failing to acknowledge failure because it's not sustainable. It's really not. Eventually, someone will see through the facade, and all of a sudden, this like mountaintop, yogi persona that we have going on crumbles. And I'll just be very honest, I have operated in leadership at the lowest levels. I've been in the C-suite for international companies. It gets harder the higher you go. The greater of a rank you achieve, you would think, you'd be like, no, I got more confidence. No, it takes a lot of humility to not put ego over growth and to not put oneself on a pedestal. But the other thing it does is it creates this culture of perfection. Now, is anybody here willing to raise their hand and say, I'm perfect? I was really hoping there'd be one. Usually there's like one class clown that's like, I'm perfectly imperfect. No.
To my kids.
Okay, all right. I would like to say I'm perfect to my mother, but I can't even pull that off. I went and spoke at Michelin the other day, and the person that was bringing me in had to like sign a waiver and whatever to escort me onto the property. And the security guard said, are you taking responsibility for John here? And he said, yeah, I got it. And I said, man, my own mother wouldn't take that much responsibility. She'd be like, he's on your property, he is your problem. We all know that we're not perfect. But when we create a culture of perfection, we don't create a space where people have the opportunity to learn from their failures. And when we have that culture of perfection, there's only one possible way that your team will deal with that, or there's only one way you will deal with that. And it's the phrase CYA. Does everyone know what CYA means? CYA. That is what happens in a culture of perfection. Nobody is willing to come forward and say, that was me. It looks like this every time. No. See, it wasn't me because I did, and I have the email, and no one's willing to be like, hey, I messed up. Here's what I learned from it. Here's how we're going to move forward. It creates a CYA culture every single time. And frankly, I have gotten to a point of looking at leaders and saying, look, I know you think you're setting a good example when you don't come out and like, hey, I failed, because you think you're inspiring your team. You think you're setting a good example. You think you're showing, hey, it can be done at an excellent level. But what you're actually doing is creating an unsustainable state of or a condition for the team that you can't meet because you're not perfect. No one raised their hand. But they all think that's the expectation for them. And so I've gotten to a point where I really don't even trust people who haven't failed. Like, I don't believe they exist. And so if you can't admit it, it's like, okay, well, what else are you lying about? I tend to think of people who haven't failed as either liars, which is most likely, or what I like to call knights in shining armor. Now that might seem like a really weird thing. Anybody have any idea of why I would call someone who hasn't failed a knight in shining armor? It's kind of weird, huh? Call them a knight in shining armor because the knight that wore shining armor hadn't done anything. They were the one posted up by the gate with no real responsibilities. The ones that went out to battle were dinged and dented, muddy, bloody, gross. They'd actually accomplished something. They'd probably been knocked off their horse or knocked off their feet. They'd actually had to overcome something. They'd actually been through something that gave them the ability to stand tall and say, I'm here and I learned something in the process. The knight in shining armor hadn't accomplished anything, and they might look good on the outside, but they hadn't been sent anywhere. They hadn't actually gone through anything. How many people here, how many of you have gone through something hard in life? You don't have to tell me what it is, but you've gone through something hard in life. Isn't it really hard to listen to someone try to comfort you who hasn't been through anything? There's people in my life who will say things and I'm like, I know you mean well. I really do. I also know what your life has looked like. And it mitigates the impact. And while there's exceptions, you ask anyone who has achieved something tremendous in life, and most of the time it has come at the expense of costly failure. It's come at the expense of going through something really traumatic. And it's why the people that stand in front of stadiums talking are always the ones that have a crazy story. I went to an event the other day that had the pilot of the airplane that carried George Bush during the Twin Tower attacks. Like, nobody cares about his story if he's not there for the Twin Tower attacks. There's a million pilots in the world. The reason we wanted to hear from him is because he had to go through something really tough, life on the line, carrying the president, literally circling because they don't know where's safe to land. These are the types of things that we go through. Now, I think that you probably understand this principle. So here's the question. What is the first step to avoiding everything we've talked about? It's not a trick question. What's the first step?
Admit you failed.
Acknowledge.
Admit you failed. Acknowledge you failed. We're going to call it own your failure. Own your failure. This doesn't mean brag about your failure. This doesn't mean be happy about your failure. This doesn't mean say, hey, I failed. But it does mean owning it. It does mean taking responsibility. It does mean being willing to actually acknowledge that it exists. And the reason for that is because ownership is power. The people that won't own their failure always are the victims. And victims have no control. They have no power. It's always somebody else's fault. And they don't get to actually make their next move in life. They don't get to move forward productively, constructively, or even impactfully. Because it's somebody else's fault. Somebody else is always in the way. Somebody else is always standing between them and their next big move. But people who take responsibility for their choices and their consequences of those choices have both power and respect. I am curious, how many of you have had a supervisor in your life that embodied this owning failure, and you were able to witness them, maybe even take more responsibility than it actually belonged to them? Awesome. A whole bunch of you. That's amazing. If you haven't, you know that it's really debilitating to watch a leader who won't take ownership. That's where the whole stuff rolls downhill thing comes from. Those aren't the leaders that take ownership, right? But if you've ever had a leader, if you've been privileged to work for someone who was the quickest to be, I call it standing in the gap, being the shield of their team. No, you got something to say, you say it to me. I will deal with the team. That's my responsibility. If you got something, I'm between me and my team. That's ownership. And what did that do? If you've experienced that, did you respect that person or did you look down on them for failing? You respected them, didn't you? In fact, you probably increased in respect. Wow, if they can do, man, okay, maybe failure's not the end of the world. Owning failure is really, really important. Let me tell you a couple of stories where failure wasn't owned and their consequences, and then how one did not recover and one did. Everyone here has heard of a Tesla? Awesome. Did anyone here know that the other side, or the other counterpart, is another company called Nikola? Anybody ever heard of Nikola? See a couple of heads bobbing. Tesla was an electric vehicle. What was Nikola? Anybody know? I think I just heard it, hydrogen. Someone just said it. Hydrogen. They were a hydrogen vehicle. They were both startups in 2019 and 2020. And if you had wanted to purchase Nikola in mid-2019, you would have paid about $300 per share of stock. Now, stock is but it kind of gives an idea of where the market says about a company, all right? How profitable, how productive does the market think the company is? So in 2019, you can see the range on the screen between $290.93 per share and $309. We're going to average that, and we're going to say if you had purchased one share of Nikola stock in 2019, you would have spent about $300. In early 2020, Tesla came out and said, hey, we've got our car and it's ready to go. And Nikola went, oh boy, okay, we need to hurry. We got to keep up. And so Nikola rolled out this video of their beautiful hydrogen-powered truck just rolling down the road. And when they did, everyone went, oh, that's amazing. We're going to run cars on water. And their stock shot up. If you had tried to purchase that exact same share of stock in June of 2020, about a year later, that is not a typo. You would have paid almost 8 times as much at close to $2,400 per share. The problem is that Nikola had failed and did not admit it. When I said that they took a video of their truck rolling down the road, I meant that quite literally. They had it on a hill and they tilted the camera. They did not admit their failure. They could have come out and just said, hey, we're behind. We don't know what's going on. And would their stock have taken a hit? Would their reputation have been tarnished? A little bit. You know what it would not have done? It wouldn't have sunk like a rock. Anybody want to guess? Oh, I already hit the button. That's okay. July of 2025, that was how much their stock was. 6 cents, $0.06. Anybody want to guess how much it's worth today? About 6 months later?
Nothing.
It's been delisted. You're correct. It was still on the market last year at this time. It has been delisted. If you would like to go into what they call pink slip trading, you can still get it, and you will pay less than 1/10 of a cent per share. 0.007 is where it was at yesterday when I looked. It wasn't because they failed. Car manufacturers fail every single day. How many of you had to take your car in for a recall? That's called failure. That's a car manufacturer coming out and saying, oops, boo-boo, let us fix it, please. And sometimes when it's massive, I don't know how many of you remember this, it's been a couple of years, but like right after the new Tesla Cybertrucks came out, it was like a month later, they had to recall every single one of them for something. I don't remember what it was. And Tesla stock took a hit, but then they got it fixed, and it continued on, and it continued growing, and I don't know what Tesla stock is because I'm an idiot and didn't invest, and so I haven't made any money on that one. But you can see that when we don't admit failure, it has drastic consequences. There's another thing, well actually I'm sorry, there's a saying I like. Let me start with a saying. This is by a guy you probably heard of named Bill Gates. And he said, success is a lousy teacher. It seduces smart people into thinking they can't lose. Success is a lousy teacher. It seduces smart people into thinking that they can't lose. In a minute, I'm going to invite you to be vulnerable, not with me, but with yourself. But I'm never going to ask you to do something that I'm not willing to do. So I'm going to tell you a little bit about my story, not because you care about me, but because I hope it will be an invitation to be vulnerable with yourselves. Is that fair? Can we do that? Okay. I'm the embodiment of Bill Gates' statement. I started working when I was 7 years old, was an entrepreneur, mowing lawns, shoveling sidewalks, raking leaves, the whole 9 yards. By the time I was 12, if there was a way to make money in my neighborhood, I had figured it out. Not only did I have my little lawn business, I was stocking shelves at the local convenience store. I found one of those like fundraiser catalogs, except that company would pay me cash money for every item that I sold instead of those stupid little spinner prizes, right? If there was a way to make money, I figured it out. Additionally, at 12 years old, I got I got involved in martial arts and loved it, had kind of a natural talent for it. Started teaching my first class at 12, shortly after I started, and by the time I was 15, I was an assistant instructor. Fast forward to 19 years old, the guy in front of you has over 500 students across the Phoenix metropolitan area, has his own house, his own car, doing all the things that you would hope a 19-year-old would do. If you have children that are in their teen years, if you just take that slice of my life, you're like, oh my goodness, I pray my son turns out like that. The problem is that success is a lousy teacher, and it seduces smart people into thinking that they cannot fail. And my issue was not so much that I did not admit failure, it was that I did not acknowledge failure. Because despite all of the success that I experienced, I had a massive lack of character. I had a massive lack of integrity. And so I was doing all these things, and I was the poster child, and it was great, and everybody loved John, but John had significant challenges internally that nobody else knew about. And when John was 19 years old, that's me, by the way, I'm not trying to talk in third person, I'm just telling the story, okay? Leave me alone. I did what I've repeatedly referred to as made the stupidest decision of my life. How many of y'all made a bad decision at 19? All right, about half the room made bad decisions at 19. The other just lied right now. So everyone's a failure. Everyone here is failing at this point. At 19 years old, my friends, this was very serious. At 19 years old, I made the stupid decision to go with 3 of my friends. We had the ridiculous idea to light a fire, and my best friend who struck the match did not make it out of that fire alive. Arson is a crime, right, police officers? A little bit. When someone dies, does it get more serious or less serious? A lot more serious. My choices, my lack of character, resulted in serious consequences, serious failure. There's no one in this room that has failed bigger than I have, I promise. And the only thing that separates me standing in front of you from somebody who is tattooed up and wasting his life away on the side of the road was a willingness to own that failure after it happened. I got sentenced to 14 years in the Arizona Department of Corrections. And no amount of Jesus got me out of it. For those of you that are in law enforcement, I served 12 12 behind bars, and I had a choice to make on day one. Was I going to acknowledge my failure? Was I going to own it? Or was I going to make excuses? Was I going to blame the cops? Was I going to blame anybody else? Was it going to be somebody else's fault? Or was I going to say, I made a bad decision and it's my job to make that right by the community, by my family, and by myself? And I did. I can proudly stand before you today, humbly, but say that not only did I evaluate my own character flaws, but I got to help other people. And during my time there, I built something they call inmate peer programming, which was a rehabilitation program by inmates and for inmates. We had over 10,000 people, participants and completers in that program, and they still use materials that I developed to this day. And even though that was in Arizona, I've gotten to meet with senators here in South Carolina, and I've gotten to go into the South Carolina system. And although prison is not a big part of what I do, we're a corporate training company. I get to speak to people on a level that says, look, whatever you've done, I promise you, you don't have that nasty F behind your name. Failure sucks, and it has horrible consequences sometimes. But the only thing that makes it worse than actually failing is when we don't learn from it. 12 years after I made that very poor decision, I got that ID. And if you can't see it in red letters at the bottom, it says released offender. Ladies and gentlemen, I'm not here to give you a pity story. I'm not here to make you feel sorry for me, because you shouldn't. I made a bad decision, and I have to own that. But I do hope you're inspired to own whatever decision that you've made that you're not learning from yet because you haven't been willing to own it. I'm going to shut up for the next about 10 minutes, and I'm going to ask for 3 people to come help me out real quick. Can I get three helpers? I promise I don't bite hard. All right, Ashton will help. What's your name?
Shelly.
Shelly, thank you. Shelly will help. I'm going to ask Ashton and Shelly to pass those out to every single person, and then I'm going to invite, what's your name?
John.
John? My name's John too. Great name. Anybody that needs one, we've got pencils as well. So just raise your hand if you need a pencil, because this is a worksheet. You brought a pen, congratulations. You did not fail that part of the assignment. No. If you didn't, don't worry. And for those of you that were kind of dissecting what I said about perfection, and you're like, yeah, but what about having standards? I call the difference the standard of excellence. For those of you that just got a pencil, when's the last time you saw a golf pencil with an eraser on it? Yeah. Okay, we believe in excellence here, all right? We're not doing things halfway. We believe in excellence. So if you got a golf pencil, it's got an eraser, because we make mistakes. We all fail. It happens. On the sheet in front of you, you will notice there's a bunch of blank lines, and all I'm going to ask, there's 2 rules. Number 1, be real. You don't have to share this with anyone. You're not having to turn this in. This is not something that you're giving to me. Be real for yourself. Rule number 2 is there's no reason that anyone needs to be looking at anybody else's sheet. It's your sheet. It's your journey. The goal of the sheet is to take you through a process mentally to rewire some synaptic connections. It invites you to own it by starting with your name, then describing the failure, talking about the consequences, because we're not going to mitigate those. We're not going to pretend like consequences don't exist. And then going into the productive part. What did you learn? How have you been benefited from it? And then at the very end, it'll ask you if you want to share it. Everybody got a pencil that needs one? John, thank you so much. Shelly, thank you so much. Ashton, thank you so much. And I'm going to shut up for a few minutes. Want to pull certificates? Give about 30 more seconds, and if you're not done, that's okay. Feel free to keep writing even after I begin again. At the bottom of each of your pages, there was a line that says, I am or am not willing to share this so that others can grow too. Raise of hands, who circled I am willing? All right, a couple of you did. If you didn't, that's okay. This is your journey, nobody else's. I would like to invite one person from this side of the room and one person from this side of the room to read it out loud. I'm going to ask whomever you are, we'll figure that out in a second, to just literally read right down the page. And the reason for that is it keeps the time in check, but it also makes it where we don't make excuses, which is our natural tendency. Our natural tendency is to give explanation and excuse, okay? So if you just read right down the page, it forces us into ownership status, all right? So who on this side of the room would it be willing to be vulnerable? There's no way you're going to say anything worse than what I just did. So is anybody here willing to share? You're willing to share. Awesome. What's your name?
Christopher.
Christopher, thank you so much. Would you do me a favor, stand up and read that for us?
Okay. 6 years ago, I was going through a horrible divorce. The stress the divorce caused me to lose focus for only a moment at work. As a heavy equipment and crane operator, that could prove to be catastrophic. The mistake damaged equipment at work, and it cost me my job. Consequently, I lost my house and almost lost custody of my child. So what I learned is that emotional stamina and stability can get you through anything. Your children will still love you even after you mess up. My previous marriage was not healthy, and it was a way for me to get out. And after that, I was able to find a healthy relationship and enjoy time with my children, including a newborn baby.
Thank you so much, Christopher. Can we give him a hand, please? Thank you for sharing that. It sounds like a really tough part of your journey. Thank you for being willing to share that with all of us. Someone on this side of the room who's willing to be brave. Don't everybody jump at once now. Anybody at all? We're not going to force anybody. I'm not going to just pick somebody. Is anybody willing? Okay. That's okay. You want to?
Yeah.
Okay. What's your name?
Jacqueline.
Jacqueline. Thank you. Would you be willing to stand and share for us just so everyone can hear? The standing isn't to put spotlight. It's just so the sound waves get up there. Thank you, Jacqueline.
It's not as dramatic. It was just a permit that
That's okay.
Okay. So, my name is Jacqueline, and I failed when I processed a permit without fully checking someone's state license. It turns out they were not legally allowed to do the work that they had applied for. They wanted to build a house with a peer-only GC license. Unfortunately, because of my failure, I had to face having to revoke a permit, admit to LLR that I allowed that to happen, and tell the building official so he could deal with the LLR, the Labor Licensing Board. But all was not lost. Through the experience, I learned to double-check licensing, to explain thoroughly to a customer why we have these policies. Now I look back at my failure and I see how it helped me with making sure my work is researched well, and admitting it helped with my relationship with all of my bosses.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Jacqueline. Thank you for sharing, Christopher. Each and every one of you hopefully has something on your page. We're not going to ask everyone to read. I want to thank you for those of you that shared openly, but I also want to thank those of you who are willing to write it down. Putting things in writing is a big deal. It forces a mental kind of barrier to snap. And here's the cool thing about this. Before I say this, how many of you have gone through an exercise like this specific to failure before? Anybody? Okay. I'm so deeply humbled that I get to do this with you today. What you've just done is forced new synaptic connections within your brain to tie failure to growth instead of failure to embarrassment, which is what most of our brains are hardwired to do. The reason we don't like admitting failure is because we have been conditioned from a very young age that when you mess up, you get treated poorly. I don't know what happened, but it's coming back, so we're good to go. And so our brains are hardwired into thinking, if I fail, I will be embarrassed, I will be laughed at, I will be mocked, I'll be ridiculed. And what we've just done is started the process of helping our brain say, if I fail, I can grow. I can learn. I can become a better version of who I am. And if anybody wants more of these worksheets, you let Ashton know. I'm happy to send a PDF file. This is not something we're charging. I'll send a PDF. You guys can make 1,000,000 copies if it will help to continue to solidify that. But there's a couple of things that happens when we're willing to admit growth. The benefits of owning failure, number one, is you get personal growth. Personally, you have the opportunity to grow from it. And every one of you that just filled out the page, there's those 2 lines. From it, I learned X, Y, and Z. That's something that you don't get if you never own the failure, because you're busy making excuses instead of actually taking time to learn from it. You also get great perspective. There's an interesting thing about failure that gives us perspective that we can't get from success. I don't know what it is, but our brain treats success differently. You also get correction, because when you learn from the failure, you don't have to make that mistake again. If I go back to my story, as embarrassing as that might be, does anyone, actually the police officers probably do, anybody here know what the recidivism rate, national recidivism rate is within 10 years? It's above 50%. Above 50% of people who got locked up will get locked up again. Why do you think that is? I don't believe it's because they're victims of the system personally.
They don't learn from their mistakes.
They don't learn from their mistakes. They don't own it. They're not willing to say, I did wrong and here's how I'm going to move forward. It's the judge's fault, the police officer's fault, the co-defendant's fault. It's someone else, always somebody else's fault. And how are you going to learn about it if we don't own it? So we get this personal growth. And then the beauty of this also is that for those of you, specifically the 2 of you that just shared, when you're willing to own it out loud, you invite accountability into your life. Because everybody knows about what's happened, and now if they see you going down that path, they can be like, hey, remember what happened last time? Maybe don't hang out with stupid friends, John. Just saying. Didn't go well last time. You invite accountability, which is real. The other thing is you get to help others. You get to serve others in this process. How many of you were positively impacted by the 2 stories that were just read out loud? For those of you that can't, in fact, keep your hands up. And then Christopher and Jacqueline, will you turn around and look at how many hands are up right now? Your willingness to share empowers other people who don't have to make the same mistakes you did. They can learn from that. And it's the reality is that leaders who have failed and are willing to admit it, they tend to be more compassionate, they tend to have a more growth and empowerment strategy, and they tend to encourage others in those scenarios instead of beating them down. And if we summarize it all, people who fail create a culture of growth. People who fail create a culture of growth. We already talked about the opposite of failure and growth is CYA. If we had time this morning, I have tons of stories of CYA. Literally tons, okay? I'm talking thousands and thousands. It's rampant. But people who are willing to fail, people who are willing to say, that was me, they can disable all of that. And I will never forget, I'll tell you an abbreviated version of one story. I was part of an organization. This was after I got out, all that curriculum development that I did, I got hired to be a training manager in corporate America. They said, man, if you can build all that curriculum, maybe you can fix our training department. And so I did. I built their training department from the ground up. Eventually, I became the director of revenue in that organization before I started SML. And as the director of revenue, I'll never forget a scenario. Somebody called me. They were like 3 levels below me in the hierarchical chain. They had a question about one of our pricing SOPs. I answered directly to the CEO at this point. I did not technically have the authority to answer the question. The CEO was on vacation. I made the call. I told the person, I'll put it in an email, because I knew that's what they wanted, because that's what CYA cultures want, right? I'll put it in an email. I got you, no worries. Fast forward, guess who made the wrong decision? You know what I told the CEO? That was my call. I'm happy to pay for it if necessary. And here's what was amazing. That man had owned the company for 13 years. I'd worked for him for 3 at this point. I'd never heard these words come out of his mouth. His response to my email is, that won't be necessary as long as we learn from this. That's all that matters. You don't have to be the top dog to make that culture shift. In fact, this is a little side note, not in my notes. If you're willing to take that extreme ownership, this can be in your job, it can be in your family, it can be with your friend group, it can be anywhere you want. If you're willing to take that extreme ownership, you'll actually have those people that would have been the ones that would attack you most often come to your aid. It's really hard to attack somebody that's attacking themselves. If you're ever just like, I mean, just think about it. Like, if you just think logically, if you've ever been like, man, I'm such an idiot, what do your friends automatically say?
It's okay.
Mine say, yeah, you're right. I'm glad you're finally figuring it out. No, most of our friends are like, come on, dude, you're not an idiot. You made a mistake, right? It's when we start making excuses that they're like, no, you're an idiot. So when we take that extreme ownership, I gave a challenge to one of my people that I coach. He was having troubles at home. I said, here, next time your wife says, why didn't you empty the trash? Take more ownership than is even possibly reasonable. Just be like, oh my goodness, I cannot believe I forgot. You've asked me that like 19 times and I keep forgetting and I'm so sorry. I'm gonna do it right now. And man, if I don't get this right, next time don't even tell me, just hit me. And I just challenged him, like, try taking that extreme ownership and watch what happens. And what do you think happened? She was like, babe, it's not that big a deal. I just need you to take the trash. It's fine. But what if he had said, oh, come on, it's not that big a deal. It's just the trash. It doesn't work that way. People who fail create a culture of growth. Thomas Edison is famous for this. He didn't believe in failure, and I've been telling you that we got to own, we got to own, we got to own. But the reality is there is actually no such thing as failure as long as there's growth. Edison said, I have not failed 700 times. I have not failed once. I have succeeded in proving that 700 ways will not work. When I've eliminated all the ways that will not work, I will find the way that will. If we learn from the experience, if we grow, it's not failure because it's not the end of the story. It's a difficult circumstance that came out of success. Anybody know the story of how Post-it notes came to be? Did you know Post-it notes were an accident? You know what they were trying to create? The stickiest glue ever. And instead, they managed to create the glue that lasts exactly, and I don't know how they do this, it lasts exactly as long as you need it, minus 1 day. I don't know how. That sticky note will stay on your monitor for 12 years until you needed it, and then yesterday it dropped. I don't know how that worked, but it does. The challenge is when we have not yet failed, when we have not been willing to admit failure, we mitigate our opportunity. And there is one big challenge that we still face in this neuroprocessing side of things. Once you've failed, you may get to what we've talked about today. Because you kind of don't have a choice, right? You kind of have to move forward. And there are people that don't, they end up in insane asylums. But like, if you're going to be a functioning adult, if you fail, you have to move forward. What about in that suspended reality of what if I fail? I'm going to give you another worksheet. We're not going to do it here today. I need a couple of volunteers to pass this one out as well, please. If you're willing to help me out real quick, just a couple pieces of paper and 2 volunteers. Who's willing to do it for us? Same 2 people? Of course. You know, y'all are killing me. Thank you so much. This one here, we're not going to do this during our time together today. This one addresses, you'll notice the first one I gave you was a confession of failure. This one is called confession of fear. This is designed to rewire that neural processing aspect of your brain so that you don't have to be paralyzed by what if I fail. And you have the ability to go through and say, hey, my name is, and I might fail if I. And if I mess this up, here's what the consequences are going to be, because there are consequences. I'm not here to tell you there's no consequences. There are consequences to failure. But if I succeed, I'm going to experience this, whatever the success is, and either way, I get to learn ABC, or I think on the page it's 1, 2, 3. This is designed for you to do on your own time. Again, if you want more of these copies, Ashton, I am happy to send you the PDF copy of these resources if that would be helpful. But that's for you to do on your own. Thank you both for helping again. As we begin wrapping up, Henry Ford said, failure is simply the opportunity to begin again, this time more intelligently. If you're in the business world, we talk a lot about do it like you're doing it for the second time. Same idea. Because the first time never works the way you want it to. If I got any DIYers in here, you know what I'm talking about. Dale Carnegie said, develop successes from failures. Discouragement and failure are two of the surest stepping stones to success. Who wants to read our next quote from Thomas Watson Sr.?
If you want to increase your success rate, double your failure rate.
I did something this year I've never done before, and quite frankly, I still don't know how I'm going to do it. So I might fail in this endeavor, but at the top of my list, it was position yourself to fail more. Now, I don't know how you do that, right? Like, I genuinely have no idea. I don't want to fail. But if I'm not willing to fail, I'm also never going to succeed because I'm not positioning myself. I'm not willing to double my failure rate. Chris Voss says failure plants the seeds of future success. Failure plants the seeds of future success. Ladies and gentlemen, as we begin to conclude our time together, Ashton, how are we doing on that part of the project? Are we good? Ready?
Yeah, well, there's a few people that we're going to have to print special ones out for.
Okay, perfect. As we begin to conclude our time together, I like to do something that is potentially ridiculous. But I believe pretty strongly that it is genuinely those who are willing to fail growth-mindedly that accomplish the most in life. And a lot of times you go to these little workshops or seminars or whatever it is, and at the end you walk out and you get like a professional development credit, or you get a little certificate that says, yay, I participated in something. And there's nothing wrong with that, but let's just be honest, most of them are not that meaningful. If you've ever done any of the LinkedIn learning, you know, it's like, hey, another certificate, woohoo, right? I'm just gonna go on my resume. So we have a certificate for you today, but it's a bit unique. It's a bit unique, and I'm gonna actually need one because I don't have it memorized, I'm gonna be honest. Which is the stack of the people that are here? Got it here? Awesome. Sweet. Can we give Ashton a hand for putting this all together? Amazing group. Okay, so here's what this certificate says. Certificate of Success. This certificate is proudly presented to, and your names are all on there, in recognition of enduring catastrophic failure and debilitating difficulty that led to learning invaluable lessons and gaining immeasurable development, leading to success at a level previously not thought possible. I don't know if it'll be meaningful. You can shred it after I leave. I got no ego in this. But maybe it'll be meaningful. Maybe it'll be a recognition, a reminder that if we own it and grow from it, failure can be very beneficial. And I'm going to call you off one by one, and yes, you got to come up here and get it. We're going to do this fast. We got about 5 minutes to get all 45 of you. You ready for this? Saturday Night Live status, just come on up. I'm going to have your certificates ready to go. Will you join me in welcoming Miss Christiane Farrell? Where you at? Where you at? There she is. As Christiane comes up, Mr. Mark Arnold. Thank you. Mr. Eric LaFontaine. Miss Christy DeLuca. Miss Tanya Campbell. Oh, she had to leave.
My team.
Would you like to give it to her?
Thank
awesome. Miss Karen Delstein. Or Delestein. Or Desaline. I don't know. She also had to leave. HR kicked all their people out of here.
We're trying to hire people.
Logan Reckbra. Lori Wilson. Logan, you're welcome. Did I just give you the wrong certificate?
Yes. I do.
You're Lori.
Yes.
Okay, beautiful. I just gave you the wrong one because this is Karen's.
This is TJ.
TJ Roston and John Poole and Christopher Davis. Thank you. Thank you, Valerie. Appreciate it. Thank you, Christopher. Valerie Puntillo and Susan Bettelli. Which one's Valerie? There we are. Thank you, Miss Valerie. Thank you, Miss Susan.
Thank you very much.
Sherry Pompey and Michael Robertson and Rebecca Schultz. And oh my goodness, I'm gonna fail right now. You know who you are. Whoever it is like, oh, he just got to my name. Kashmir Simmons. Did I get it? Yes.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Jenna Griffin and Molly Lamine. And Carlos Diaz. Jenna?
Thank you.
Thank you. Molly? Yes. Wonderful. And Carlos?
Yes, sir.
We're going to get through this.
Thank you.
Angela Nosaluk and Kara Browder and Haley Howard. Angela? Kara? Haley. Give you that in your hand.
Here.
Thank you. Michael Toby, Bridget Newell, and Jonathan Coteau. Michael?
Thank you, sir.
Bridget? Thank you. And Jonathan. Also my real name, Jonathan, so good. Chris Hartzell, Ronald Blackwell, and Jacqueline Witchman. Jacqueline?
Thank you.
Thank you. Ronald and Chris, oh, there they are, all right, very good. Jane Yager Bumrind. Chris, thank you.
Ron, thank you.
Thank you. Miss Jane, excellent. Grace Hagan and Frankie Petite. Jane? Thank you. Grace.
Thank you.
Patrick Hunkler, Adam Willis. Patrick? Thank you. Yeah. Adam, thanks for being here.
Thank you.
Robert Blocksky, Shelley Bosner, and Kate Miller. Rob?
Because I failed, right?
You failed. Oh, Robert?
Yes.
Right.
Awesome. Thank you, Robert.
Thanks.
Angel, and then we
And
need
Kate.
John. We need to make those two.
Okay.
So special for Angel Bana.
Angel Bana!
Congrats.
Just congrats, because we don't have a certificate for you, because we're going to get it. And then Robert,
No.
oh, I'm sorry, John Wagner, thank you also. We will make you a certificate.
What's the name?
Michelle. And then Ashton, I just want to point out, Ashton conveniently pulled her certificate out so that she didn't get called. So just because of that, Ashton Lang! Ladies and gentlemen, it has been a privilege sharing with you here. Let me see if I can get back. There we go. There we go. If you have any desire to connect with me further, I would love to connect with you on LinkedIn. That QR code will get you there. It'll connect with me, and I would be happy to connect and say hello. This got put in my slide deck last minute today. Ashton let me know that she talked to one of my guys, Robert. No expectation. This is not a sales presentation. If anybody cares, I did publish a book earlier last year. If you have an interest in getting servant-minded leadership, how mindfulness changes servant leadership, that QR code will take you to the Amazon listing. And then my last thing, if you hated this session, if this was terrible, you wish you'd never come, waste of an hour of your life, I would love to know. This is one of our most requested sessions, and I genuinely want to know how we can make it better. So if you hated it, I'll be here for a few minutes. If you liked it, let Ashton and the entire HR team know. We'd love to do more for the town of Mount Pleasant and provide additional trainings and whatnot. And if you really, really liked it, only if you really liked it, and you want other people to know about it, I would invite you to share a Google review of your experience here today. That is going to be the QR code that will take you directly to Google review, not for me, but for SML as an organization. We are sitting at 11:57. Means we have 2.5 minutes left. I have time for one question. Yes, ma'am.
What does SML stand for?
SML stands for Servant-Minded Leadership. Servant leadership is a fantastic idea. I think it accidentally got hijacked by well-meaning people who had to prove ROI, or return on investment, for many of the leadership development programs. SML seeks to kind of bring it back to the mindfulness that as leaders you are making a difference, The only question is whether that difference is positive or negative. And we as an organization try to equip frontline leaders to make that difference positive in the lives of those they lead. I have one more question. All right. Ladies and gentlemen, it has been an honor and a privilege to share this time together. Hope to get to do so again. For now, have a great day.
Thank you everyone for attending.